Hey, I'm Emily, and I'm doing the PowerPoint for children's outcomes based on the technology they grew up with. So to start my group, we said that basically overall children's outcomes varied between like positive and negative outcomes because when we looked at the journal articles versus popular media articles, we noticed that the journal articles tended to be more, think that they had more of a positive side, and then the media articles had more of a like negative outlook on things. And then it says you can see the rapid advancement of technology as generations progress, and that Generation Z is the first generation to never know a world without high-speed internet and advanced technology, because as these generations are like being born, they're like automatically put in as a digital native because they're like growing up around technology like as soon as anything is like introduced to them, if that makes sense. Okay, so for the first journal article, so the purpose of this article was to understand how pre-kindergartners would use interactive media technology. So basically testing like, is this gonna help them learn, or is this gonna like create kind of a problem? The example was that there were 12 children, ages 3 to 5, and 5 boys and 7 girls. So the methodology behind it was children were split into 3 groups according to skill level. So like 1 is low and 5 is the medium, and then 6 is the high skill level. Over a course of 10 days, children are asked to recognize equipment, understand the words in, out, up, and down, and use computer programs. So observers recorded the time it took them to complete the program, their facial expressions, verbal expressions, and how like they use the mouse and body movements and stuff like that. The results and implications were that the higher group spent less time than the lower group on using the computer program. 68% of the kids understood the program, and 33% shook their head when they needed help. The children who had computers at home knew how to use the mouse compared to the children in the low group, because obviously they were more used to it, having been around it at home. And then most children sat during the program, but some danced or moved a little to the music. Their overall attitude was very positive and upbeat. They weren't like intimidated by the technology or anything like that. The only limitations were that ability levels have a connection on understanding the program. So whether or not the kids grew up around like had a lot of technology at home versus this was like their first interactions with technology. The next journal article is the information technology use and creativity, findings from the Children Technology Project. So the purpose of this project was to explore the relationship between video games and creativity levels in children. The sample was 491 12-year-olds, where 53% were female, 34% were African American, and 66 were Caucasian. So the methodology, I can't say that word, present participants with 2 different pictures. One picture is an egg, and then the other is an elf on a poolside. The children are told to draw a picture containing the egg in it to then create a storyline behind the drawing. The children are told to explain the elf situation and why it was sitting there on the poolside, what it was doing, and stuff like that. And then they're also asked to question anything about the elf in the picture. So the results were that this survey found that there is an overall positive relationship between video games use and creativity. The implications that followed the survey was the exploration between video game use and creativity levels that can be displayed through variables discussed. And I think, personally, that video games do encourage creativity. However, I feel like there's a lot of negative creativity when it comes to like violent video games versus learning games and games like that. The effects of tech are still unclear for Gen Z because they are now just entering adulthood. The benefits are that it shows efficiency, skills for future careers, and connectivity. I definitely see the skills for future careers and connectivity because obviously with technology comes like social media and things, and you're constantly connecting with friends, family members, just peers, anybody through like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, and things like that. And then the future careers, I feel like every career is going to need to know how to use a computer or like have some advancement in technology. The challenges were that it led the kids to like a less imaginative imagination and then developing sound social skills was a big problem because they were constantly either talking to people through social media or only on their phones like all day. It like prevented them from going and being in the outside world and playing with their friends at the park, or for an example, or things like that. Okay, this one is the impact of technology on the developing child. This article found that families used to have a very close and strong bond, and then once technology started entering family dynamics and stuff like that, families became very distant because kids would hide out in their room, or parents would be focused on work on the computer all the time, just for a few examples. Now that kids have a ton more access to technology, this increased use of technology is causing kids to actually develop like physical and psychological disorders like ADHD, depression, anxiety. I think a lot of the depression and anxiety probably comes from social media because you're constantly comparing yourself and being compared to others. And then obesity and diabetes from the lack of exercise and outside play. I know it also caused behavioral disorders and things like that. Okay, for the comparative analysis, like I said, we found that journal articles had more of a positive outlook on children using technology, while the popular media articles viewed it very negatively and found the cons to it. But the journal articles did more research. They were more professional, so probably they would be more trusted. And they said that video games had a higher level of creativity, but the popular media articles said that technology can lead to physical problems and less social development. So like less creativity. Okay, the evaluation. This is kind of just reiterating the topic and introduction, but as a group, we found that children's outcomes with technology vary between positive and negative because of the different sources told us different things. Children's learning and creativity are positively affected through technology use, and that psychological development is negatively impacted. Okay, for our activity, we did a true or false game. And for the first one, we said that playing video games equals higher levels of creativity, and this was actually true. For the second one, we said that technology does not enhance children's motor skills, and that was actually false. I think that, well, clearly it is true, but I think when it comes to like texting and playing video games and using like your full hands and things like that, probably helps with like fine motor skills when it comes to like fingers and stuff like that and coordination. The third one was technology does not affect psychological behavior, and that was false. Like in the second popular media article, said that it can cause depression, anxiety, ADHD. Number 4 was that all generations are affected in the same way through technology use, and that is false, clearly, because generations like Gen Y, they were introduced to technology a little bit later in life, and so they didn't get to grow up with it like Gen Z did. Number 5 was despite the constant connectivity from technology, children struggle with developing social skills, and that is true. Just because you're talking to friends through social media and things like that does not mean that you're learning how to deal in everyday life conversation. Number 6, educational games can help children with cognitive skills from a young age, and that is true because it can help with creativity and things like that. All right, and that was it.